war nations in the interest of the corporate elite. The United National Anti-War Coalition, the largest and broadest anti-war and social justice coalition in the US, fully understands the need for united national and international action to stop the war makers everywhere. We look forward to working closely with them in the future, not least next year when the NATO summit is going to be held in Newport in South Wales, where we'll be planning together with CND and obviously CND Cymru the activities to oppose the NATO summit being held there. I want to invite the speakers to contribute now. We'll get through this session in just about an hour, and the first one really needs very little introduction because she's played a fantastic role in the anti-war movement, not least in public opposition to the build-up of to the parliamentary vote in Syria, which probably resulted in a slight change of career path for her. So could you give a very warm welcome to my parliamentary friend and neighbour, Diane Abbott.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, comrades, good morning.
Good morning.
Ooh, let's try better than that. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, comrades, good morning.
Good morning.
It's a great pleasure to be here with you this morning. I have to leave early because I'm going to open a conference for black NUS students. But I just wanted to make a few remarks. And the first thing I wanted to say was that there is no more important political issue than war and peace. For me, it is the seminal political issue. And we know that the people that suffer the most from war are the poorest, women, young people, and children. Just this week, we heard about how children are being targeted and killed and tortured in the Syrian conflict. But we also know that all of the wars that we see around us today across the planet are partly to do with the aftermath of imperialism, arbitrary borders, which have caused disputes that have gone on now into the 21st century, largely to do with neo-colonialism, wars that have the imperialists pulling the strings because of their wish to access raw materials, commodities, and in particular, oil. So when it comes to war, it's not just a question of sitting back and saying, why are those people over there engaged in conflict? We know, and we're here today, in the heart of Westminster, in the heart of the British political establishment, that is almost invariably the activities past and present of Western multinationals and Western politicians that cause the wars that we see. Now, I sadly have been in Parliament through a series of wars, the first Gulf War, the second Gulf War, Afghanistan, Yugoslavia. But a few months ago, we were for the first time in Parliament able to halt a war, and it was the Syrian war. One of the reasons all these wars have always gone forward is because the Labour Party has felt pressure to be patriotic, to support our boys, and in every case has fallen in behind the warmongering. And to our shame, in the case of Tony Blair, we led the warmongering more often than not. But with Syria, I was very clear what happened. It was a bank holiday Monday. The next day, the afternoon, I was in Hackney and I heard Ed Miliband on the radio talking like somebody who, if certain notional conditions were met, was willing to vote for war with Syria. had been called back that Thursday. Now remember, Parliament was still in recess, but we were going to come back one working day later on the Monday. So nobody was in any doubt. The reason we were called back on the Thursday, when we were coming back on the Monday anyway, was in order to get license to bomb Syria that very weekend. I spoke to journalists. I was the first member of the front bench to come out publicly against the war with Syria. It was in the papers the following day. I understand there was a huge dispute in the leader's office the following day, but I'm glad to say that at the end of the day, the Labour Party leadership took the correct position, voted not just for its own resolution opposing the war, but refused to vote for David Cameron's resolution. David Cameron's resolution fell. He was not able to bring it back, and you know why? Because had he brought it back, as some Labour people were suggesting, people like Jim Murphy were suggesting he should, had he brought it back, he knew perfectly well that even more Tories would have voted against it. I spoke to Tories who are opposed to this war, and they told me that. So Cameron's resolution fell. Britain wasn't going to war. Consequently, America and France had to halt what was an escalation to war that weekend. And we are now in talks with Syria. But you know, that was partly an example of Parliament actually saying, we, in the name of the people, have the ultimate right to say whether Britain goes to war. It was also important because it was Parliament standing up against illegal wars, wars of choice, if you like. But it was also important because it showed, finally, the consequences of years and years of campaigning and marching and writing and agitating by people like yourselves in this hall and thousands of people like you in Britain, in America and across the world. The fact that the British Parliament found the courage to stand up and say to its leadership class, no, not in the British people's name, we are not going to war, was a consequence and a triumph for anti-war campaigning for very many years. So I'm glad to be here. So I'm glad to be here to speak this morning. Very sorry that I won't be able to hear the rest of the debate, but this is a very important conference and I'm sure you're going to have a great day. Thank you very much.
Diane, thank you very much, and please pass on our greetings.